Hey there, I'm Chris, also known as Killerdog or KD. In this video I'm going to talk about all the fire monsters that came out in 2023. This goes up to the last anniversary. I know I'm many months late, but that's where I am at. And in this video we're also going to talk through the various cycles that came out, that is the Garden Fairies and the Virus Dragons, the ones that came out in 2023. So we're going to start with those, and then we're going to talk about the element, then we're going to talk about the new monsters, and then the highlights and the power level. This year I called the year of power creep. There are a lot of strong mythics, ones that got buffed, new ones that came out that are very strong. We'll talk about that more in the water video when I sort of do an overview of all the monsters that came out in this year. So, Garden Fairies first off. So we talked about Garden Fairies in the past. I couldn't fit all 10 on the screen because we got, a full cycle of 6, and then we got 4 more now, and there are 2 more coming. I think since the anniversary we've had 1 more of them, which is the fire one, so I think we're just missing the storm one? Yeah, I guess the second storm one. Anyway, so these add on to the 6 that we had before. The new ones are somewhat similar. They still have some of the kind of general things. They often have a dual hitting move that's like some kind of, critical move there. They have a vigor piercing move, that is where they have 80% or more HP, and they all heal each other with a very fast Garden Fairy healing move to allow these vigor moves to kind of work. Then they have a Garden Fairy move that requires at least 2 Garden Fairies on your side of the battlefield, so kind of plays into them playing with each other, along with that healing which they kind of need for the vigor moves. And then they have a secret skill which is a very fast vigor move, and then some kind of aura passive. Now the aura passives are quite interesting because some of them don't interact well with each other, which means that like for the kind of setup that you want to go with the Garden Fairies, there's a lot of different combinations you can go for, and certain ones that don't play together. So yeah, the way you want to play them plays out very differently depending on which ones you pick. In terms of the gameplay, already mentioned a couple of the things, healing each other for the vigor moves. There's a lot of situational attacks, that is, things that critical under certain conditions. And, that's why I was down on them originally, I think, was that a bunch of them, you needed to meet, certain stuff in the enemy team for them to actually like do their thing properly. But now there's so much versatility between them all, and there's enough actually really strong ones that you can build Garden Fairy teams that are very good. I think they're quite cool overall. Like, some of the cycles I'm quite down on because they fundamentally don't work well, or they're, a bit too strong, something like that, or they're a bit too one-dimensional. The Garden Fairies have a lot of versatility in them, and they're very nice, and they're balanced well enough that they are strong, but not overpowered, which I think they've done an amazing job doing that, especially now that they've, designed 12 of them. Like, trying to design 12 monsters that work together and are stronger together, but then not too overpowered, is really tricky, as we've seen with other things in the past, like with the dolphins, where they went wrong with those and they had to adjust them, and then now they're not really played because they're too weak. It's very hard to get right. It's the kind of thing in game design that is so hard to do when you're purposely putting a bunch of things to interact well with each other to balance that against other stuff. It's really hard. So I think they've done an amazing job with the Garden Fairies. And then, anyway, so this new Garden Fairies, what makes them slightly different is they're very destructive or controlling, whereas the ones in the past were not so. They were like, I think they were sort of aggressive / countering certain things in particular, while being difficult to counter themselves by not, because they didn't have killer weaknesses, that kind of thing. Whereas these new ones are very disruptive. So the key players, the Earth one that we have here, which is the new one, Garden Fairy Clover, this is exceptionally tanky. Like, it is ridiculous, and it gives you good sleep control as well. This is a fundamental piece of Garden Fairies going forwards. It's extremely strong. It's how the original Earth one should have been, but for some reason they made it generically really good and then had to nerf it, and then now it's kind of in a weird place, and it's a protector that wants teammates to die. I don't really know what they did with it properly, but this one is much better designed and very strong. From the original, Holy, Shadow, Earth and Water, those ones are kind of the core part of Garden Fairies that are very strong. So the Water one kind of ties it together with supportive stuff. The Holy one gives you stun protection and heals them, which is especially good with things like the new Earth one that has hardened carapace to keep it above high health. The Shadow one's just super aggressive, and then the Earth one is generally good. So of the new ones, again, the new Holy one is an extra layer of stun protection. So now you've got two options, either this new one or the old Holy one. And also it gives a fast knockback, which, like I said, the new one's being disruptive. That plays really quite nicely. When you have a good setup with the Garden Fairies, say you're built around the new Earth one and it's tanking, and there will only be certain enemies that can deal with that, having some way to knock back those certain enemies is really, really good. And then the new Water one, it has combos. It's a bit of a weird one, we'll talk about it in a second, but it combos with the new Earth one very nicely for sleeping enemies that enter, and then the Earth one can Dream Crush them. Anyway, let's get into talking about them individually, because there's a lot going on here. So the new Earth one, this has Hardened Carapace plus high defense. This is basically the defense cap against everything other than full attack monsters, which is crazy when you consider that they can all heal it every 60 seconds. Well, faster than that if you've got multiple ones of them that can heal it. So this is a super tank, and it's Auto Protect Plus. This is just a huge wall. I have it low in PvE only because Garden Fairies require owning a bunch of Garden Fairies, so it's quite a sort of big hurdle to get over. And Garden Fairies, most of them are not particularly good in PvE. This one, though, is what makes them good in PvE. If you have this one plus a couple of the other ones, you can have a really good time in PvE. But clearly PvP, it is super good. It's one of the best monsters for HP boost, legendary. And yeah, looking at the moveset here, it's mostly just about tanking. It's got Vigor Purify All, which can come up quite nicely. That also, purifies the enemy team, so you can remove poison from them to sleep them. So it's relatively slow, but once it gets a turn, it's a bit brutal, because, it's already hard to kill anyway, and then it starts sleeping enemies, and you can just continually sleep them to sleep control them. You sleep the enemies which have any chance of killing this. You can Dream Crush to kill them very effectively. It's 100 seconds to do that, and then continue sleeping the new ones. And then, as the fail case for all of that, it can also double counter strike, which is very good damage if there is a fire enemy. I always forget about the double counter strike. It catches me out, and it's really strong. But yeah, so this in the Garden Fairy setup just tends to play super, super well. It has to be killed as a priority because it will just sleep control you, and if you can't kill it, you will be losing to all the other Garden Fairies as well. Yeah, very strong monster. I like this a lot. This has kind of made me excited for Garden Fairies. The second one, Garden Fairy Sakura. Now this one is a bit of a weird one. It's very situational in the moves. So Assassinate and Vigor Diffuse, only Death Revenge monsters, only Protector monsters. The Assassinate is not a very strong move. Like, I was quite down on this when I saw it, but what you're looking at here is basically the knockback and stun protection. And so when you play in the Garden Fairy team, it tends to play reasonably well. Like, it is kind of, it fills the gap. It kind of does what you need it to do. It's not a key player in that it makes the Garden Fairy setup strong, but it's good filler that it works nicely with things. It's got this healing move still, so it can support, say, for example, the Earth one that we just saw. So it can support the setup, knock back the things that are a problem, and the Vigor Revival Ritual can bring in one of the Garden Fairies that just died. There isn't any Garden Fairy that creates something at the back to sacrifice, so that's a bit awkward. It's also a bit awkward that it comes in at 50% HP, which all the Garden Fairies care about it being high HP. But even so, it's a role player. It does fine. It's very annoying to me if you've got any Death Revenge, because Vigor Diffuse is very strong. So remember, if you're ever facing it, that's a Vigor move, so you can put it down onto low HP, and then it can't do Diffuse. But anyway, so this one's fine. It fits in the setup, just isn't one of the strongest ones. Garden Fairy Gloria. Now this one, you'll see I have it low in the tier list. This is annoying to meet in PvE when it's buffed, but otherwise, to use it yourself, it's not particularly good. People get excited about Nullifying Strike because they mostly know it on monsters which have boosted stats, so that it kills really easily. Here you have Vigor Attack Boost Plus, which does give 50% more attack, but it's still a bit too weak with a Nullifying Strike. So that Nullifying Strike doesn't really one-shot. it basically two shots, and that's the only really like good move on this monster. Like, you know, what are you really doing with this? You're just basically doing the vigor attack boost and then nullifying strike. The Gun Fairy Foil Curse, you need, I'm trying to see if any time has to pass. No, you can just use that, and then something will die after 300 seconds if you've got any Garden Fairy. So that's not, it doesn't have to be Gloria, it can be any Garden Fairy, then it can die. But that's a bit too slow to take things out. Like, you can use it to kill things that are sleeping, fine. But yeah, this is just a bit of a weird one, to be honest. I don't really see much use for this, other than it's annoying when you meet it in PvE, because then the Nullifying Strike does one shot, and it otherwise stops you from cloning anything, which is annoying. It also revives, so it's a pain to actually like kill. But you know, again with the revive, it comes back on low HP, and they all care about being high HP, so you know it can't figure attack boost and that kind of thing, which is just really awkward. So yeah, Secret Skill is quite good, but ultimately I don't really see much use for using this monster in any setup. I think you're better off, you know, like the one we just looked at, Garden Fairy Sakura. That's one that is strong enough that you can use it in a setup, even though it's not one of the special ones. But this one, it doesn't quite meet that bar that I don't think you'd be using it. Garden Fairy Mizu. Now this one is really interesting. People freaked out when they saw this, if I remember correctly, because the neutralizing aura is very, very, very strong. So they want to counter things that are high speed, which was interesting actually. In the last video I talked about how they brought out more higher speed monsters this year, and they want to sort of stop high speed monsters being used. But anyway, neutralizing aura, it basically means you know, all the high speed monsters. Then you've got the low speed monsters. The low speed monsters, they come in fine. All the high speed monsters get put to sleep for 100 seconds. So they basically, like, they are just behind the low speed monsters. So it works quite nicely. It means that if you get into a controlling position, you can hold it. But it also means you have to build around it either with other Garden Fairies, because, oh wait, no, sorry, it does put them to sleep as well. Either with other slow Garden Fairies, or slow monsters, in which case, if they start killing through your team, then they're going to, you know, have an advantage because you haven't got anything fast coming in. I think Roaring Entrance does work around it, so you can use Roaring Entrance monsters that are low speed. But it can, you know, be used against you if you haven't built around it properly. It's a weird one. And then also the only damage stuff that it can do is killing shielded monsters. Despairing Wave is just not a good move, so it doesn't really do much. The Frozen Heart, you know, slowing down the enemy's moves, fine. And the Vigor Accelerate team, that's good, you know, to get this controlling setup, which then you clear through the enemy team with. But you can probably get the impression what I'm saying is, if things go well, this can be really, really strong. You can clear through the enemy team very well. If things do not go well, this falls pretty flat. And it doesn't have any like guaranteed synergy with the other Garden Fairies, but it does work particularly well with the new Earth one, because things will come in sleeping. That Earth one can then Dream Crush them. That's nice. It's also a massive pain to deal with in certain circumstances because it's camouflaged with full defense. Like, this does not die easily at all. So if the opponent is using high speed monsters and you've, you know, built around this and it's going fine for you, you can capitalize on that sleep very, very nicely. So it's pretty good. All things considered, it's pretty strong. It's just nothing too exceptional, and at times it will be quite insane with what it does, but other times it will feel quite bad. So that's kind of where it is. It's an interesting one. Definitely one to play around with and try to figure out how to use, because it can be very good in the right circumstances. The next cycle was the Super Epics that we got this year, and these are brand new to this year. They're pretty interesting, but unlike a lot of cycles which want to be used together, these do not want to be used together because they're all stun absorbers. And the concept behind them is basically that they are stun absorbers that when they get stunned over 400 seconds, they die and do some revenge effect. Now, that said, that was a cool kind of design before they changed the way stun worked this year. I think all these monsters unfortunately got quite a lot weaker because of that change, because now they need to be hit specifically by a big stun in order to trigger that effect. If they're not hit by a big stun, then they just sit at high seconds and then come back and get a turn. That said, they're still kind of playable. They're still fine. The strongest one's still good. They're just not as good as they were designed to be, and I think it's a bit unfortunate. Anyway, so the moves of them, so they all have a generic kind of damage move, something like a Zealous attack. They've got 2 type killer moves, so like Dragon Slayer or EMP, that kind of thing. They all have the Terminal Virus move, which is the strong, unique move to them that is very good, that we'll get into in a second. They all have some kind of entrance passive, some kind of thundering passive, which is just what I described. 400 seconds. If it's stunned over that, it dies, and then some positive effect happens for you. And they've all got good speed and good defense. So design-wise, as super epics, they fit the bill of good super epics for PvP. Good speed, good defense, some kind of good move like Terminal Virus, and it's a stun absorber. There's some kind of entrance that you can perhaps build around. There's good, interesting stuff that makes them playable in PvP. In terms of gameplay, so like I said, they'll get used individually just for stun protection. That's primarily what you put them in a team for. Terminal Virus, so I'll describe the way this works. So you can only use it on a monster that has 50% or more of its HP remaining, so over half health. Then when it goes below half health, it automatically dies and Revenge does not get triggered. This also means that the monster that, say, you Terminal Virus something, and then that thing gets one-shot, so does literally die, and it has, some revenge or whatever, that revenge does not happen. It does not count as being killed by the thing that one-shot it. It counts as being killed by the Terminal Virus, which is an indirect kill. It's not added to the Virus Dragon either. So it's important to know that for things that when you're trying to charge a blood move, if you try and charge a blood move by killing a monster that is virused, you will not charge the blood move. But it's really good generally for taking down anything that is has high defense buffs or has revenges, that kind of thing, because it basically guarantees that revenge is not going to happen. Once you put that virus on it, it will not happen. And yeah, some of these basically, you're picking one of these. You pick the one that works best in your team. There's some kind of synergy that goes on with some of these. Also, to be clear about the gameplay of this, so the general kind of design of them is that you Terminal Virus something and then use the generic damage move to put it down below half health, and then it will die to the virus. So they kind of consistently get kills by using those 2 moves. In reality, you can play them a bit better because you can continually use the Terminal Virus move and use your other teammates to hit enemies down below half health. And then they've all got these 2 type killer moves which come up, and they're high damage. They mostly one-shot things. So the key players here, as I say key players, it's like standalone monsters, got to remember. So the Holy One, this was nerfed after its release. Originally it was like the clear standout. Like, I would not consider any of the other ones. The Holy One was just super, super good, because the Thundering passive is put all enemies to sleep for, I think, 200 seconds. It might be longer than 200 seconds, which is just brutal. Like, you can take over and win if that happens. So it's the harshest counter to stun. And that's also why I said it's unfortunate that the Thundering passives aren't as good anymore, because it's made this one a lot weaker, because that was a really strong component of it. It also creates a bronze shell next to the enemy team, which is really good for just general disruption, so it generally works well and has the harshest counter. The Storm one has some combo potential, we'll see that when we get to it. And the Shadow one has, I think Power Slash may have been changed now, I can't remember exactly, but either way, it's got a bit more sort of stuff that plays into the Terminal Virus a bit better. A lot of people like to use Link Shadow as well, so having a more decent stun absorber than Bitter Beast is quite important, and this Shadow one is better than Bitter Beast. So let's look at the monsters individually. The Earth one, this one has stuff to do with shields, so it shields the team when it dies to stun. It applies a shield to one of your teammates when it enters. Quite nice, nothing super special though. The Piercing Blow is quite good, but you've got to remember, these have low attack. The Piercing Blow is not killing things, it's just a far more reliable way to trigger Terminal Virus. And the 2 killer moves here, Plants don't come up that much. Bugs though, Bug Union is a thing. There aren't that many bugs in the game, but the ones that are in the game are very strong. So sometimes you pesticide. Otherwise, though, this is just a bit of like sort of weird shielding stuff. It's not a standout among the others. The fire one, this one is a bit more of a standout because it's got Dragon Slayer, and obviously there are a lot of dragons in the game, so that's quite nice. And then otherwise, the thundering move is stun, so stunning them for 200 seconds is a pretty brutal stun. Yeah, may or may not work, depends. But either way, that's a reasonably strong revenge. Lava Entrance Plus is also very good. So that's I think why I've got it in A in PvP rather than B like we saw the last one. It's mainly for the Lava Entrance Plus because that basically kills token monsters. So this is sort of anti-tokens plus, potentially some other stuff. Does the normal virus dragon thing of the terminal virus and can counter dragons, which are fairly common. So Virus Dragon Delta, this is the really strong one. So, like I said, the sleep for 200 seconds, that's amazing. Adding the Bronze Shell next in line, really good generic value. It's got the normal terminal virus stuff. Beasts are extremely common, and Beast Hunter is an exceptional counter to them. It's it's a one-shot move basically. So it can counter very common monsters, and otherwise got the good generic stuff. Zealous Attack also ish does enough to get things to die to terminal virus. Probably not quite, but does it to some things. So this one just generically very good. I've got it in S Plus for PvP, probably dropping down a bit because of the change to stun and how I don't think this interacts with it quite so well anymore. But if they change these thundering passives to die at 300 seconds when they're stunned, it will then suddenly become very good again. So probably worthy of S Plus. Then we've got the Shadow one. So the Shadow one, like I said, particularly good when you're looking for a Shadow Stun Absorber. It's better than Bitter Beast. Despairing Entrance is pretty nice. Reducing them all by 20%. Counters various things that the enemy wants to be on 100% HP. It also gets them down a fair bit to then have the terminal virus more easily triggered. Also works quite nicely in particular, AoE spam setups in Link Shadow, which is definitely a thing. To reduce their health more and just help with that. Power Slash also better for triggering terminal virus than other options, and the two killer moves always kind of fine. So the Storm one, the combo synergy with this is Rapid Push. So when it enters, it reduces the teammate with the highest seconds by 30 seconds. So that's specifically frontline combos, and it's kind of like if you've ever seen the Grizzleguard combo where Grizzleguard gives a random teammate a turn when it enters. And so what you can do is have some entrance control right at the start of the battle, say like a Black Titan or a White Titan, retreats at 90% speed, then Grizzleguard comes in, and what your team is say like a Kuromasa or something that like has amazing sweeping power but is very slow. And then you have two other monsters with Give Turn. And so it doesn't matter which monster gets the turn from Grizzleguard because you're always going to get a turn with Kuromasa. That is basically what Virus Dragon Zeta does, where you use it and the lowest speed monster on your battlefield is something like Kuromasa. And so then when this enters, it then pulls it forwards by 30 seconds. That works for certain combos. It's slightly more limited than like the Grizzleguard setup I just described. But you don't have to be as specific as Grizzleguard, where Grizzleguard you have to like have two Give Turn monsters and your sweeper. This is like you can use a sweeper and then you can use other stuff too. It just won't instantly give the turn to your sweeper. So that's a cool setup. Also, robots and birds are much more common than most things. So robots especially, like robots are very common as a thing. Bird Union is pretty popular. There are certain monsters like Plumsalisk and Sorrel that are very common, which are birds. And then Nullifying Strike is a good move to have. It basically means you're doubling up on the nullifying here, both with Terminal Virus and Nullifying Strike. So if something's on low HP rather than above 50%, you can still nullify its revenge here. So this one's quite a cool one. The Thundering passive is pretty bad though. Like, instantly setting one teammate to 0 seconds, like it gives turn to one random teammate. That's not particularly good. But you've got the combo stuff. I think you probably use it in that kind of combo setup, and then it's like above average on the battlefield compared to the other virus dragons. The only thing I would say about this one is it does have chrono weakness because of those passives, which is a bit of a downside. It's a bit of a downgrade in that way. So last we have the water one. Now this one I have high in the PvP tier list, and I've gone back and forth on it quite a bit. So the thing here is that I was comparing it to Freeze Cobra, and Freeze Cobra is for it's a water super epic that is basically the same stats and same speed. It supports poison, and this kind of does the same thing. And so when I was comparing it to Freeze Cobra, and I was kind of like, this is kind of on par with Freeze Cobra, so I should put it in the tier list like around where Freeze Cobra is. But the more I thought about it, I think probably not. It's probably not as good. But the versatility of Terminal Virus is very nice. So you can read from the Poison Storm entrance. It enters, it poisons all the enemies. You can use this in the setup with water poison, or even outside water poisoning. It doesn't have to be in link water. I wouldn't use this like near the front of a team because you need that Poison Storm entrance. Like you're building around that if you're using this monster. But this is yet another nice super epic for support. Nice stun absorber for supporting poison teams, which is really good to have. And the upside that this has over Freeze Cobra is it poisons the enemies as it enters, whereas Freeze Cobra needs to enter and then poison gas, or enter and then enemies get killed and then the newly entering ones are poisoned. This one just comes in and poisons enemies, which there aren't too many monsters that do that in the game that are also come with versatility like stun protection. Certainly at super epic. So this fits that niche, and so I think for specific teams this is pretty nice. Actually, my current PvP team that I've been using yesterday and today, I'm using this because it's you have to play a single element in your team. So I'm using water, and like I have poison at the back, and so I have this in there, and it's been playing pretty nicely. So it's quite cool, quite good. But I may be a little bit generous when I give it an S- in PvP. And then, the killer moves, reptiles, not super common. I think reptiles will get some support in the future. Aquatic, though, very common in water, so it counts as water at least very nicely. So that was covering the cycles. We can now talk about fire itself. You may be looking at the time of this video. I've spent a fair bit of time talking about that stuff, and there's not much more time. That's because fire got almost no support this year. I think of all the years I've done this is the least supported thing I've ever seen of an element for 1 year. Now, Link Fire was very popular at the time. I think it was last year. Yeah, last year we didn't get much support, basically because they didn't want to support Link Fire more. And it looks like they've still been hesitant to give Fire any more tools. So Fire only got 1 Mythic, 1 Legendary, and 2 Super Epics this year. And bear in mind, the Legendary is the starter, the starter monster Legendary form. One of the Super Epics is the Virus Dragon. Like there's basically 1 Super Epic, 1 Mythic, which they got this year. Anyway, Fire generally it's a fast, aggressive element with no protectors. Like that's just it's for aggression. There's a bunch of dragons, and most of the mythics seem to be humans. Like that is common, obviously, because we get so many humanoid mythics these days. But I think particularly Fire, there's only like a couple that are not human. Maybe more than a little bit more than a couple, but most of them. So the themes, we've got poison is a massive thing in Fire. I'm not going to go through this stuff too much. There's Link Fire as a theme, like in Link Fire. In Fire generally. There's just a lot of Link stuff in here, which is kind of why they've had to go a bit more careful with support for Fire in recent years, because they pushed this too much, and it was very easy to create powerful setups. It still is very easy to create powerful setups with it. Funnily enough, a few years ago I used to say I didn't think it was like super strong, and I didn't have that much trouble with it, and that kind of thing. And I still think it's not super overpowered or anything. It's balanced. However, ironically, in recent months, the thing that I've been dying to most in PvP, losing to most in PvP, is Link Fire. Every time it comes up, I'm like, oh darn, this counters my setup. Like, why am I'm getting beaten by Link Fire? yeah, just their aggression and like how every monster in the team can kill your monsters is very hard to deal with. Like, you cannot really shut it down easily, and I guess most of my teams are trying to shut down the opponent. Anyway, moving into the monsters themselves, so we've got Crabriel. This is the one, kind of unique super epic that I said, and I'm not the biggest fan. It's kind of funny. Like, I like the flavour here. People are like, oh, there must be some, some cool story here. Look at the little crab going on an adventure. Then he gets his little jacket, and then, he dies, and he gets cooked and becomes red, and is an angel. And he actually, this is the first time we've ever seen this. It starts off as water element, and then switches to fire element when it evolves. So yeah, cool flavour. It's this weird kind of angel thing that's all about kind of rejuvenation into its angel form. So it is angelic. I don't know if we have many fire angels. I think Solarial is one, but I don't know if there's many others. So it's high speed and it's got payback killer. That's basically the thing about it, is it counters Death Revenge, which I guess is also sort of flavourful. Maybe they did that on purpose. Anyway, payback killer is the main deal about this. Otherwise, if it survives a while, it can double survivor. The double survivor is reasonably strong, but not particularly strong. And since it heals every time it gets a turn, it doesn't matter about the recoil on it. Similar with the piercing blow. But again, piercing blow is reasonably strong, but not that very strong. So this is like a high-speed payback killer monster, which is fine, but we've got Gaia Kaiser, and Gaia Kaiser is just so much stronger. It's higher speed, it's got Accelerate Team for the times when you can't do that. You can even use it in PvP because you can life flip it and then Zealous Attack to kill it off when you don't want the payback killer. Gaia Kaiser is just basically a better Crabriel that I don't see much reason to use this, but it's cool, flavorful design. I'll give it that. So the other super epic was Virus Dragon Epsilon. We talked about this earlier on, so no point talking about it here. Then we've got Raid Kong. So I said in the last video, this is the one of the starters that got a legendary form that I don't think is that strong. The main reason is the moveset is just not really doing what we want it to be doing. So what made this strong originally, and it's very similar to the super epic moveset, is high speed with throw. And so back in the day, you would do that and you'd remove a key piece from the enemy team before they got to do their combo stuff. And that's fine, except that it's been lowered in speed, so it's now 80% speed rather than the 90-something, and these days things are too tanky that even though this has full attack, the throw doesn't necessarily sort of easily kill what you want to be killing, and we just kind of want to do stronger stuff these days. So yeah, doing that and then being super squishy is not the best. What's interesting about this is the immobilizing grasp, because this is, I said how it's lowered speed than the super epic form, but it is still high speed, and doing immobilized grasp on any humanoid, humanoids they're everywhere now, like every mythic's a human. Being able to push a key enemy out of play or kill one with throw is reasonable versatility. It's just not particularly strong. The other interesting thing to note, and this is particularly key for new players, is attack boost makes piercing blow one-shot mythics quite nicely. It does, I think, about close to 5,500 damage. So basically it quite reliably kills things. So, even though it's slow, it does get piercing kills. So if you're looking for a monster to just kind of trade reasonably well, or if you're in, say, a specific PvE battle and you need a big piercing attack, this can do the job. But if you're looking at competitive PvP, there are better things than this. Still, quite a cool thing for, newer players. If they want a monster like this, the art is obviously quite cool. It's going after, King Kong type thing. Then we've got the mythic, the one mythic, and it's a complete joke. This mythic is so bad. They buffed it. So it went from being the worst monster in the game to arguably the worst monster in the game. I really struggled to find redeeming qualities about this mythic. The issues are just like all over the place. So it's low speed, doesn't have the highest defense compared to like some of the stuff that we see come out, so doesn't necessarily survive super well. It also requires a second form of it, So when it first gets a turn, it can't really do anything useful. Like Pure Cure, situationally, that might be useful. Blazing Arabesque, not particularly good. It does small damage, pushes them back by 10 seconds. Situationally, might be useful, but very situationally. So those two moves, like, you're not really doing them. What you're doing is you're doing Mirror Sacrifice to kill a teammate and create a second one of these. Now, that requires you to have a teammate that you want to kill. Otherwise, you're just kind of randomly killing off a teammate. And then when it enters, then basically they can kill one of the two, and then what do you do again? Well, you have to do that again. If it's the original they kill, then the second one has the Mirror Sacrifice move. If it's the second one which they kill, then the original cannot Mirror Sacrifice. Instead, it has to use Flaming Rebirth to reset itself, to then wait until it gets another turn, where then it does Mirror Sacrifice, and then get another turn before it can attack. It's so slow. This, when I saw it, I was like, I think some people, were saying some positive things about it, and I was like, guys, this is just going to flail around and do nothing. Like, this is Near Monsters Magikarp. It just, like, you can see by the artwork, it just does splash. It's a little goldfish that does splash. It doesn't really do anything, and it's only really going to do anything if the opponent, if you're already winning. Like, the opponent can't stop it from doing its thing. Which is not the kind of monster you want to have in a team. It only works if you're already winning. If you face this, kill the newly created one each time, and the old one, if they don't have the secret skill on, they're just screwed. If they do have it on, well then they have to take a while to reset it to then do the Mirror Sacrifice again. Each time it enters, it damages things on the battlefield, not very much. It heals the other Honghua, doesn't really matter too much. If you don't have high damage output to kill these easily, then maybe you have to kill it before it gets its first turn, because they will get into a strong setup with what they're doing. But in reality, most of the time you can deal with it perfectly fine, and it's just too slow to do anything. And it's not got stun protection. It's you can sleep it, it all that kind of stuff. Like you can handle it in any way you like. So it's not a threat. it's just really bad. Now I have got it in B for PvE because obviously the AI does not know how to deal with it. So you can get it going there, and then you can Riptide Rend and actually piercing sweep through the enemy team and have a bit of fun with it. But only because the AI is stupid. It's not any other reason. So there are no highlights to go through from this year. This year for Fire was just really, really bad. It was just all gimmicky stuff or too niche. So yeah, the highest we got was the Fire Super Epic that is in A, and that's basically because we've got loads and loads of old Super Epics that are not very good, that basically beaten by anything that comes out. And then Honghua in PvE, like I said, you can have some fun with it there, but that's basically it. So that's Fire from this year. Pretty bad, but we got to talk about the monster cycles in this video, and that was quite interesting. So the other ones are clearly way better than Fire, because this year we did get some strong monsters. So if you want to hear about some exciting monsters, you'll hear about those in the upcoming videos. But that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in a video soon.